The Boys showrunner Eric Kripke continues to reveal that he is an utter disgusting, sick, and depraved individual, and he is trying to destroy other people by what he is broadcasting with The Boys. Before we get to this, I'd like to ask you please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. Roll this up over at thatparkplace.com. And yes, indeed, Eric Kripke thinks that sexually assaulting the male character of Huey in The Boys is, quote, hilarious. This is what he told Variety in a recent interview recapping the show's 6th episode. And this is what he was asked by Variety. Let's start with the Tech Night sex dungeon part. Where did the idea come for it? And why bring Huey into the situation now, kicking him when he's down by having him sexually assaulted by his childhood hero after his dad just died? How does Eric Kripke respond? Well, this is what he says. Well, that's a dark way to look at it. We view it as hilarious. That's right. He thinks that Huey being sexually assaulted in a sex dungeon is hilarious. I mean, this guy is depraved and deranged, and he's literally trying to turn viewers of The Boys into depraved and deranged individuals just like him. He's trying to destroy their sense of morality. And we will be explaining this a little bit later in the video. But let's continue with what he had to say here in this interview about to Variety. He said, obviously, Tech Knight is our version of Batman, and we wanted to really play around with that trope. Batman's fascist underpinnings as a really wealthy dude who hunts poor people and then profits off of the incarceration. So that was one. So anyways, any way you look at it, Batman has no fascist underpinnings. This is left-wing garbage that they are trying to imprint on Batman. The only people that buy into this idea are deranged lunatics like Eric Kripke, and they think that fighting crime is somehow fascist, because that is what Batman, at the end of the day, is doing. He is a crime fighter, and he does not want other people to go through the pain and suffering that he went through when his parents were murdered, and that is why he fights crime. He is not running around beating up poor people and profiting off of their incarceration. That is sick, disgusting, and twisted, and again shows that Eric Kripke has no real moral compass. His moral compass has been completely shut off, and he's trying to get other people to shut theirs off as well with these disgusting shows and episodes of The Boys. Nevertheless, he continues saying, Tech Knight was already set up to be a freak, so we were kind of already halfway there. Then the notion came up of he should have a Batcave, but let's be honest, the Batcave would be a sex dungeon. Like, even the real Batcave is just this side of being a sex dungeon. It's really dark, and there's rubber suits everywhere. It's not that much of a push to add a couple of sex toys and then a weird urinal that turns into a face mask. I mean, this guy is completely and utterly depraved that you think that you can go from a secret lair in an actual bat cave to somehow comparing it to a sex dungeon and claiming that it's almost there just because he has a bunch of super suits in the cave. I mean, completely and utterly deranged to think that that's just, oh, it's just one step there. I mean, lunatic, absolute lunatic. He then went on and said, and in the comics, there's a great storyline where Huey goes undercover disguised as a superhero. That was a story that Jack had always asked us to do. So part of it is always be careful what you ask the writers for. Then we finally had this web weaver character, and the idea of Spider-Man going down to be kink tickled in the Batcave is just too good to pass up. I'm sorry, I just couldn't leave that on the table. So he's literally pushing into this stupid, disgusting idea that Batman is somehow gay. And now it's not just with Robin. He is now abusing Spider-Man now. I mean, this guy is sick and twisted. So when asked if anyone at Amazon thought Kripke was going too far, this is what he replied. So this also reflects on Amazon and shows kind of how sick and twisted the executives are there as well. We kind of already know this because they're destroying the Rings of Power and Tolkien's work with that show. But this is what Kripke said. He says, no, that was all pretty much as scripted. We had our poor writer's assistant do a long list of real kinks because we were looking for some. And I remember reading down the list and I'm like, what's cake farting? And then they explained to me, and it's a real thing, but don't look it up. I just said, that's incredible. We have to do that. So this is really telling right here. He actually tells Variety and readers of Variety not to look this up, but he actually includes it in the show, at least according to a description of it provided by the Daily Beast. So that makes me wonder, why does he not want the readers of Variety to look up this disgusting sex act, but has no problem including it in the show for a much more larger audience? Makes one wonder, why would you not want people in Variety to look it up, but you have no problem including it in the actual television show and having your actors engage in it or at least simulate it? This is a sick man. He then concluded the question and doubled down on claiming that he found the whole thing hilarious. He said this, and then it seemed like it was a real natural tie-in to bring Ashley into it because she does have Dom sub tendencies. I love that it's such a perfect setup that he doesn't know his own safe word. It's just like a beautiful comedy setup that he's trying to find it the whole time. I mean, this guy is completely and utterly deranged. He finds this funny, and it's just absolutely not funny at all. It's sick, twisted, and at the end of the day, it is evil. And the intention of this is evil too, because he is definitely trying to push an agenda. He admits this in a previous interview with the Hollywood Reporter, where he says, I clearly have a perspective, and I'm not shy about putting that perspective in the show. Anyone who wants to call the show woke or whatever, that's okay. Go watch something else. I think that is fantastic advice. I'm not watching the show. I've not watched this show since the first season when I discovered how depraved it really was. Clearly, it's gotten even more depraved as it has gone on. So I'm so glad that I stopped watching this show. But he goes on and says, I'm certainly not going to pull any punches or apologize for what we're doing. Some people who watch it think Homelander is the hero. What do you say to that? The show is many things. Subtle isn't one of them. Right there. Subtle isn't one of them. So if that's the message you're getting from it, I just throw up my hands. So he's admitting that he has a perspective and he's not subtle about what that perspective is. I think it's very clear that he's indeed trying to get people to degrade their souls, degrade their intellect by watching this show. And that's why he's putting all of this degenerate garbage in it in order to destroy people's intellect, moral compass. And this is exactly what these shows are for. I mean, Jon Favreau has admitted that television and stories told through the medium are used, quote, to express our values to the next generation. So what then is Kripke expressing to the next generation through The Boys? He's not passing down any kind of real values with a show like this. Rather, his goal is clearly, in my opinion, to corrupt values and morality. He also wants to make viewers of his show dumber. And Pat Flynn at Catholic Answers explains this concept. I think he does an excellent job of explaining this. He says, the traditional thought is that sin not only makes us weak, but stupid. Sin blunts conscience progressively over time, that is, diminishes our grasp of moral reality, impairing our ability to reason to proper moral conclusions. Consequently, sin can and often does lead to greater sin, along with the failure to realize not just that we are sinning, but also how awful our sinning has become. In order to combat this degeneracy, this is what Flynn says, God's grace, surely, but also setting better examples and living the Christian ethic fully, especially the Christian sexual ethic, to attract those non-religious folks who are still, thankfully, repulsed by the increasing deceptive darkness that just is the logical extension of the sexual revolution, from the constant promotion of pornography and masturbatory practices to contraception and seeing others as mere instruments of self-pleasure, to redefining marriage to feign the illusion that two people of the same sex can actually be married, and so on. So that's exactly what The Boys is doing. It is clearly in the vein of the sexual revolution. It's clearly an extension of it. It's taking it for even further down the slippery slope, which we know is now real because we have lived through it. Putting these characters in a sex dungeon, having them sexually abused, and claiming that it's all just hilarious. It's all just comedy. No, it clearly has sinister intentions. It is intended to destroy our right thinking and destroy morality. So if you're still watching this show, you should not be watching this show. You should be immediately turning it off. Find something better to watch. There are so many other alternatives. This guy is trying to destroy you, and he is admitting it in this interview, and he thinks it's funny. He thinks it is funny, not just that this sexual assault is occurring to the character of Huey, but I also think that he thinks it's funny that he is destroying people's intellect and their morality. But those are just my thoughts on this. Let me know what you guys make of this. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, especially to each other, but to always speak the truth.